Alright, so a lot of you out there who watch my videos know I like a little bit of an icebreaker at the beginning, whether it's a skit or a joke. I think the amount of entertainment you receive here is just as important as the information that I want to deliver. With that in mind though, I hope you all don't mind if I actually just cut to the chase and get to something that's sort of been weighing on my heart a little bit as I speak openly, honestly, looking for your feedback in the comments down below about a topic that's been circling my head for a little bit. And then of course, we will get into the news highlighting Cyberpunk 2077's ongoing controversy, which just rages on. And that perfectly transitions into the point I want to make here in the early going, which is that Cyberpunk 2077 may be one of the very most disappointing game launches I have ever been a part of. I mean, in a crummy year like 2020 where everything seems to have gone wrong, you just hope that at least something will go right, and Cyberpunk for a lot of gamers was that game that seemingly should have gone right in most cases. And this is a worst case scenario in every way, shape, and form where now people don't even trust anything CD Projekt Red says, and it's just gotten incredibly out of hand. And so a lot of people are understandably very angry. When you've got people like me who had a positive experience over on PC and made a mostly positive review, even where I highlighted that the lack of console copies, incredibly suspicious. The lack of using gameplay was such a anti-consumer move. I highlighted bugs, glitches, I highlighted the lack of choice for a RPG that was incredibly disappointing to me, and even though I thought other parts of the game really made up for it, still that point was really disappointing. So despite being very critical of the game but ultimately enjoying it, I've had a lot of people coming at me calling me shill, just saying incredibly negative, hurtful things, just really coming at me because my experience on PC did not represent theirs properly on consoles. So then it got me thinking that right now my review does not represent the actual experience that most people will have, because you're either going to have to play on next gen or PC, and even then it can be somewhat inconsistent. So I have considered for the time being, until the game gets fixed, unlisting my review. I take my reviews very seriously, and I think my critique and breakdown of the game on its merits is accurate, is fair, is understandable. But right now it feels, I think, sort of out of place in a world where most people can experience it. So I want your thoughts in the early going. Should I unlist my review? Should I leave it? Not because of the opinion. I don't care if people disagree with me. That's fine. I'm not here to support people's opinions or make sure they feel validated. I'm telling you whether or not a product is worth your money. But at the same time, if people are going to be using that as a purchasing decision, I want to make sure that it's in a point where most people can experience it. Just let me know. And now, thank you for your patience. Let's get into the news. So I imagine that Jason Schreier has a lovely piece cooking up for us, because he's covered pretty much every broken game at its launch, from Mass Effect Andromeda to Anthem, and I imagine Cyberpunk 2077 will be yet another on his list of coverage, because here we have an email from someone in April of 2019 that Jason Schreier had shared with everyone on Twitter, linking the development cycle of Cyberpunk 2077 to that of Anthem. Now, I do think Cyberpunk 2077 from top to bottom is a way more competent, better, enjoyable game than Anthem, so that is a huge difference maker there. But obviously, for those who don't know, Anthem's development cycle is one of the probably worst that we have had documented on paper here in the games industry, from inconsistent ideas to poor management to starting production way late, crunch, hurting the mental health of the workers. I mean, there is so much wrong with Anthem's development cycle that it's really scary to see someone who worked at CD Projekt Red comparing it to Anthem. Now, do keep in mind, this is just one person, but it's something I wanted to highlight right off the bat, because OpenCritic as well has now decided to let people know that there are disparities in the performance, player experience, and review scores between PC, next-gen consoles, and Xbox One and PS4. So the OpenCritic team and several other critics suspect that the developer, CD Projekt Red, intentionally sought to hide the true state of the game on Xbox One and PS4 with requirements such as only allowing pre-rendered footage in reviews and not issuing review copies for PS4 and Xbox One versions. This notice will be taken down in February 2021, which is apparently when the second patch will be dropping. Furthermore, IGN did re-review the game, giving it a 4 out of 10 on Xbox One and PS4. Now, I gotta call it as it is, which I always try to do on the channel. To me, this struck as something more performative because they kind of gave it a 9 out of 10. But that's just the issue with number scores, right? It's like, I never even like to talk about it because for someone, they'll see FIFA got an 8 and be like, wait, you like Cyberpunk as much as FIFA? That's the issue. I just felt like it struck me as a little more performative because they were catching a lot of heat for reviewing the game in such glowing light, which is interesting because I know someone at GameSpot was being dragged for their review when they gave it a 7 out of 10, and now people are celebrating that review. It's just, dude, like I said, this is a messy launch with reviews. The main highlight of today's video, though, is going to be a investors call that happened right after we had received the letter from CD Projekt Red highlighting how they plan on handling the support for Cyberpunk 2077, from a game plan for patches to refunds. How are refunds going? We're going to be talking about all of that. Let's look at this investors call, though. There was a transcript that Game Informer actually went ahead and jotted down, which I will have linked in the description down below if you want to go ahead and take a look at it. They took some of the major highlights and put them all into one article, and we'll be using that as our main source today. So let's do a little bit of quick reading and then responding. After 3 delays, we as the management board were too focused on releasing the game. We underestimated the scale and complexity of the issues. We ignored the signals about the need for additional time to refine the game on the base last-gen consoles. It was the wrong approach and against our business philosophy. On top of that, during the campaign, we showed the game mostly on PCs. This caused the loss of gamers' trust and the reputation that we've been building throughout a big part of our lives. That's why our first step are solely focusing on regaining those two things. We are concerned on fixing Cyberpunk on last-gen consoles. To me, the most standout thing is that they ignored the signals, right? You look at what they say here where they blatantly admit we ignored signals that something was wrong with last-gen, and then you look at their letter to all the consumers for Cyberpunk 2077, and in that first paragraph they said they should have paid more attention to making it play better on PS4 and Xbox One, which I always found hilarious now that I've read it again, because I think to myself, well, you paid close enough attention to know to not show it. So once again, man, this is them talking to the consumers, trying to get them to hear what they want to hear, and then talking to investors and getting them to hear what they want to hear. It's a game of politics. I've told people this for months about CD Projekt Red. They talk out of both sides of their mouth. Hopefully people start listening here, but let's continue reading on because it's highlighted beautifully in this investors call. Like, you could not make it up. It's beautiful. Investors on the call were then able to ask questions, asking what happened to make sales decrease so much in a span of just 4 days, especially so for last-gen consoles. Nilubowicz said that despite doing, quote, good initial sales, end quote, the fact that the last-gen versions were seemingly left in the dust caused the dramatic pivot. Now, Wachowski added that throwing more developers at it would not have made the quality of the last-gen version any better, and the team is still collecting data regarding all of the reasons behind the decline. This is what I mean about telling investors what they want to hear, telling consumers what they want to hear. In this case, they're telling investors, we're still getting the data, right? They're buying time. We're getting the data here. We're trying to figure things out right now. When clear as day, it's just that the game was broken and people are smart enough to not blindly spend $60 on something that was busted. The CFO then added, one has to understand Microsoft and Sony have refund policies for every product that is released digitally on their storefronts. Despite several articles I've seen that things are being set up for just us, it's actually not true. These policies are in place and have always been in place. They're not specifically offered for us. Anyone who has purchased any title on the PlayStation Network or the Microsoft storefront can ask for a refund, and if it's made within certain boundaries, usually related to time, usage, and so on, can ask for that refund. Our procedure here with Microsoft and Sony is not different than with any other title released in any of those storefronts. We are not encouraging gamers to return the game. We hope they'll give us a chance to improve on old-gen consoles, said Iwaniski. One fix was released last weekend. Another one is coming in 7 days. But there is an option, obviously, and easiest way to ask the retailer for a refund. If that's not possible, we also provide help. As of today, it's too early to say. We've just begun the process, and we sincerely hope that gamers will prefer to wait for updates since they had waited so long for the game. But again, this is our humble hope. We assess the situation in a couple of days when we have the numbers. So I don't think that their write-up on the yellow wall of text was actually misleading, because they just said use the refund systems available through PlayStation and Xbox, which I think we're all informed of are not super reliable. But I think when people saw that CD Projekt Red was recommending them directly, that it meant something along the lines of like, hey, we figured something out where you can return your copy of the game because it is so broken. You can get your money back until you actually want to spend it on this game. What's happening, as you'll see on screen right here, is that people are not having a good time, especially when it comes to PlayStation. Microsoft is a little less strict, but with PlayStation, if you start the game up, that's it. And of course, when you go to store-bought copies, at least in my experience, once that seal is cracked, right, you remove the packaging off of it, that's it. You can't return it. So CD Projekt Red offering refunds is now going to eventually funnel everyone to that one email they provided on the yellow wall of text. What's going to happen is either people are going to get very delayed returns because they're hearing that only until, what was it, the 21st of December is that CD Projekt Red is going to handle this. So there's such a short time gap that CD Projekt Red can't do much, and a lot of these storefronts and digital storefronts can't do much. So what's going to happen is a lot of people who spent their money are kind of stuck. And I think CD Projekt Red was aware of that, but the idea of, once again, saying what wants to be heard, right? Saying, we're offering refunds. People want to hear that. They're like, yes, give me my money back. But what people didn't realize right off the bat is that actually getting that to happen is not as easy as it would be expected to. So now it's up to chance. Do you encounter someone on the PlayStation support service that's really nice and understands the situation? Or do you get a by the books dude who's sitting there going, yeah, sorry, you started the game, and that means that you cannot return this. Enjoy your broken game. You know, it's like, can you blame PlayStation for enforcing the rules they've always had and not bending for Cyberpunk because it's such a popular game? Or can you blame CD Projekt Red for stupidly throwing everyone into the refund system that wasn't ready to cater their desire? Eurogamer had an interesting write-up about refunds for Cyberpunk 2077, but the most notable excerpt was right here, in my opinion. I spoke to a source at a game store, which is in the UK, who confirmed the policy. Staff are not doing refunds. I was told by a staff member who asked not to be named in order to protect their job, quote, we've been told to direct people wanting refunds to the CD Projekt Red email that was provided, end quote, they told me. Quote, the only time we're doing any refunds is if the game is still sealed in the original box. Even then, we are only doing exchange or credit note as per our current returns policy, end quote. Like I said, man, it's all gonna funnel right into that email, and it's gonna cause a lot of issues. It's gonna flood CD Projekt Red. Some people are gonna be left short because they have a time limit on the amount of people who can get in and get that return going. It's just, man, it's awful. It's an awful situation. It's so disappointing. Regarding external testing to ensure the last gen system versions were functional, the main reason behind the request for refunds, Kaninsky replied, we have an internal QA department and we're working with external companies as well. One thing that perhaps didn't help us is the virus. Internal testers are able to test the game working from home because we provide them with our own connected machines and so on, but external testers working for external companies were not able to test the game from homes. They have test centers, and if they are not there, they're not able to work. So we have seen a decrease in the number of testers, but I wouldn't point it as a major source of problems. The third one, about multiplayer, first and foremost, we haven't confirmed any dates yet, and as I've said before, it's hard to judge now. We're in an unanticipated situation, yeah, give me a break, and we'll have to reassess. This is planned for January. We're now focusing on managing the single player release, working on patches, communication, and as I said in the very beginning of this call, our focus remains on gamers. What I took away from this is, yeah, okay, obviously it didn't get enough testing. I mean, you just take one look at the game between its bugs, glitches, and its performance on last gen. Yeah, it didn't get enough testing. That hurt the game clear as day. But more importantly here was what they said about multiplayer, right? Which apparently was slated for 2022, but I think that's getting bumped back because just like with any, I've mentioned this before, live service games, right? When a live service game comes out, they have all these bugs, glitches that they try to fix, and then the content starts too late. So what I imagine what we were originally promised, which was early 2021 DLC, like all those quests and things being added to the game, I think those are getting pushed back, which means then the multiplayer gets pushed back. And I know a lot of people right now are angry and they're not itching for more Cyberpunk, but for those of you out there who are having a decent time with the game, you are enjoying yourself, you do like the game, I think it's gonna be a while before we see extra content in the terms of new features, mechanics, things like that, which I think is good because they do need to fix the game. I don't know if they can necessarily fix the game alongside saying, here's new features, because maybe those features interrupt something and cause a brand new set of problems. Like, it's just such an unpredictable beast, especially in a work from home situation. The final bit of this write-up from Game Informer says, Nowakowski mentioned, it is more about us looking, as was previously stated, at the PC and next-gen performance rather than current-gen. We definitely did not spend enough time looking at that. I wouldn't say that we felt any external or internal pressure to launch on the date other than the normal pressure, which is typical for any release. So that was not the case. In the terms of the certification process and third parties, this is definitely on our side. I can only assume that they trusted that we were going to fix things upon release, and that obviously did not come together exactly as we had planned. Regarding the third question, where we want to go on PlayStation or Xbox, as stated in the statement made public today in the morning, we are planning to get the game in much better shape than it is now, of course. And a lot of that is going to be happening in December. Come January and February, you're going to see larger improvements, which we've already stated. We have also stated that if your expectations is that the game is going to be equal to, say, next gen or PC in the terms of performance, that definitely isn't going to happen. Having said that, I'm not saying it's going to be a bad game, but if your expectations regarding, say, visuals or other performance angles are like this, then we're going to openly state that that's not going to be the case. It will be good, playable, stable game without glitches and crashes, though that's the intention. I get a kick out of them really saying that they didn't feel any pressure at all. They clearly didn't care. Like, it could not be any more obvious. And you can hear right now as my dogs bark, they're very fired up about how exactly the console version has been treated. I know, right? Thank you for chiming in. I appreciate your feedback. Now, they're claiming that a lot of the things that are going to make the game stable are going to happen in December, and they promised one more patch within the next week. So I don't know. We'll see about that. I don't believe that. I gotta be honest. There's far more patching and work that needs to be done, and that does require time. And of course, with them taking a holiday break, which is completely understandable, by the way, because this game did release right next to the holidays, where I think that first patch would have been out within a week. But obviously with the holiday break, and understandably so, by the way, not complaining, it does bump things back. But this is just such an unfortunate, constant controversy for Cyberpunk 2077. It just continues to roll on, and the way I look at it is, of course, try to get your refunds if you can. I know it's gonna be very difficult, and it shouldn't be up to you to sit on the phone for multiple hours when you've trusted CD Projekt Red to deliver a competent game that does work, and it doesn't. So it shouldn't be up to you, and they should have had a better idea of how to work this refund process. But of course, they also had to act quickly because they were silent for so long. And man, it's just like, it was a lose situation for them. It was a disheartening release, and it's kind of just getting negative all around this whole game. And so hopefully they can get it fixed so we can really start talking about the merits of the game, because right now it's about bugs and glitches. But I have a video planned. I want to talk about the choices in the game, right? And I'm going to do that soon. I want to break down the game itself and what could be better about it, what they can improve in DLC, what they could do better with gameplay, that type of stuff. So we got to wait on it just a little bit longer as the news really kind of sorts itself out and things start to get patched and calm down a little bit. But for now, this is the latest on the Cyberpunk 2077 controversy. Once again, please do sound off in the comments down below on what I discussed in the beginning of the video. If you wouldn't mind, it would help me just figure out where the community's at. That's very important to me. I want to make sure that I'm representing the product and you well. I take my reviews very seriously, so I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say. Other than that, be sure to follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.